Welcome to Uncovered Biblical History and Traditions, the channel dedicated to lost stories of the biblical past. Discover stories of pre-Christian historical roots, biblical legends, lost church history and forgotten historical characters of faith. It is very helpful if you hit the like, subscribe and share. Help build my channel and let's take a look together into these uncovered forgotten tales. Picture this, the year is 45 AD. In the magnificent halls of Imperial Rome, an extraordinary wedding ceremony is taking place. The bride, a Roman princess, daughter of the most powerful emperor on earth. The groom, a Christian king from the very nation Rome has been trying to crush for 2 brutal years. But here's the twist. While this couple exchanges vows in Rome, 300 miles away in the misty highlands of Britain, another impossible wedding is simultaneously unfolding. The sister of the British war leader is marrying the Roman general who has been leading the campaign to destroy her people. Welcome to one of history's most bizarre chapters, a tale where sworn enemies became in-laws, where Christian faith challenged imperial might, and where love bloomed in the most unlikely places imaginable. To understand this extraordinary moment, we need to rewind to 43 AD, when Emperor Claudius made what seemed like a routine decision. The target was Britain, that mysterious island populated by people the Romans dismissively called barbarians. But these weren't ordinary rebels. The British Isles had embraced Christianity with a fervor that threatened everything Rome represented. These were religious revolutionaries who refused to bow to Roman gods, their resistance inspired by unshakable belief in Jesus Christ. Claudius assembled the largest army in Roman history. Seasoned legions that had conquered half the known world prepared for what should have been a straightforward campaign. How long could a small island of crude barbarians hold out against the mighty Roman war machine? Much longer than anyone imagined. Leading the British resistance was Caractacus, whose very name struck fear into Roman hearts. The Roman historian Tacitus was forced to admit this British king possessed military genius. For 2 solid years, Caractacus orchestrated a defense that defied every military convention. His warriors, driven by what Tacitus called reckless fierceness, didn't just hold the ground, they repeatedly defeated Rome's most elite legions. In battle after battle, the supposedly superior Roman forces found themselves outmaneuvered and utterly humiliated. But here's what made the British resistance truly remarkable: it wasn't just military prowess driving them. These warriors believed they were fighting for something infinitely more valuable than territory. They were fighting for the right to worship freely, to practice their Christian faith without interference from pagan Rome. The British would rather die than compromise their religious convictions. Their earthly life, they believed, was merely preparation for eternal glory. This wasn't just military strategy, it was holy war. After 2 years of devastating losses, Emperor Claudius faced an uncomfortable truth. The greatest army Rome had ever assembled was bleeding out against an enemy that refused to stay defeated. Every time the British suffered a setback, their resolve grew stronger. Tacitus recorded with amazement that the fierce ardor of the British increased after each defeat. The turning point came at Brandon Camp in 45 AD, where Caractacus finally suffered a significant reverse. Claudius, desperate to end this drain on his finest legions, seized the opportunity. But instead of pressing his advantage, he did something unprecedented: he offered peace talks. Caractacus and Arviragus were invited to Rome itself to negotiate. Not as prisoners, but as legitimate leaders worthy of imperial attention. The fact that Claudius treated these barbarians as equals spoke volumes about the respect British resistance had earned. What happened next defied every expectation. To seal the peace deal, Claudius made an offer that shocked the ancient world. He proposed to give his own daughter, Venus Julia, in marriage to Arviragus, the Christian king of the people Rome had been trying to exterminate. Think about this moment's audacity. The emperor of the most powerful civilization on earth was offering his princess daughter to a man he had officially branded a barbarian. This was the same Claudius who had sworn to wipe out Christianity wherever he found it. The wedding took place in Rome with all imperial pageantry. But while this impossible union was being celebrated in the capital, an equally stunning marriage was occurring back in Britain. Gladys was her Celtic name, though history would know her by her Roman identity. She was Caractacus's sister, a British princess personally converted to Christianity by Joseph of Arimathea himself. She had completed her religious education at legendary Avalon, studying alongside women who had known Jesus personally. And she was marrying Aulus Plautius, the Roman general who had been leading the military campaign against her own people. The complexity is almost impossible to comprehend. While her brother was in Rome marrying the emperor's daughter, Gladys was in Britain marrying the enemy commander. Brothers and sisters on opposite sides of a war, yet somehow finding love that transcended hatred between their nations. These weren't political calculations. Contemporary sources make clear these were genuine love matches. Claudius had fallen for a woman whose intelligence and sophistication rivaled anything Roman society could offer. The peace talks ultimately failed. Despite these extraordinary marriages, British leaders found Rome's terms unacceptable. There could be no compromise on religious freedom. Christianity, they insisted, could only be practiced in absolute liberty. So the impossible happened. War resumed, but now personal stakes had become nightmarishly complex. Claudius commanded Roman forces against his wife's family. Caractacus fought against his sister and brother-in-law. Arviragus led resistance against his own father-in-law, the emperor himself. Imagine conducting military operations against people who were now literally family members. Imperial suspicion fell on Claudius. Claudius questioned whether a Roman general married to the enemy's sister could be trusted. In 47 AD, Claudius was recalled to Rome, honorably, but unmistakably removed from command. He brought his foreign wife with him, and that's when real drama began. Gladys, now known as Pomponia Graecina, had become a sensation in Roman society. Her extraordinary scholarship earned her the honorary title, Graecina, for mastering Greek literature. She wrote books in 3 languages, hosted gatherings for Rome's intellectual elite, and for 40 years would lead the capital's most distinguished social circles. But her Christian faith made her a target. The trial of Pomponia Graecina was legal theatre at its finest. She was formally accused of practicing foreign superstition, Roman code for Christianity. Under Roman law, her husband would judge his own wife. The courtroom scene was extraordinary. Pomponia stood trial before a jury composed of her own relatives, members of the royal Silurian Christian family. Every single person judging her fate was secretly sympathetic to the very faith she was accused of practicing. The trial became an elaborate charade. Claudius, who had almost certainly converted to Christianity himself, was never going to convict his beloved wife. The jury of her Christian relatives hardly going to condemn one of their own. Tacitus recorded the verdict with characteristic Roman brevity. Claudius pronounced her innocent. But the acquittal was just one chapter in a larger story. Pomponia's influence on Roman society was profound and lasting. For 4 decades, this British Christian princess shaped the cultural and intellectual life of the empire's capital. Her home became a meeting place where Roman aristocrats encountered Christian ideas, where the apostles Peter and Paul found welcome among the empire's elite. She represented something entirely new in Roman experience, a barbarian who was demonstrably more cultured and sophisticated than most Romans themselves. Her trilingual literary works challenged every assumption about British inferiority. Meanwhile, the war ground on for 7 more bloody years. A new Roman commander had replaced Claudius, but the fundamental challenge remained. How do you defeat an enemy whose faith makes them fearless of death? The British continued their seemingly impossible resistance. They weren't fighting for territory or political independence, they were fighting for the right to worship freely, and that made them virtually unbeatable. The end came suddenly at Clun in Shropshire in 52 AD, where Caractacus finally met decisive defeat. But even Tacitus admitted this was due to a strange trick of circumstance, rather than Roman military superiority. The real victory belonged to the British in ways Rome couldn't yet understand. The marriages that had seemed like desperate diplomatic gestures had planted seeds of transformation that would eventually reshape the empire itself. Through Pomponia's social influence, Christianity had gained a foothold in Roman aristocratic circles. Through her intellectual achievements, British culture had earned respect in the imperial capital. The faith that had motivated British resistance was slowly conquering its conquerors. This remarkable chapter reminds us that the most powerful forces in human experience often transcend politics and warfare. Love, faith, and intellectual brilliance proved more durable than military might. The marriages between enemies became the foundation for cultural exchange that would ultimately transform both civilizations. Caractacus and his warriors had lost the war, but their unwavering commitment to religious freedom had won something far more valuable. They had preserved their faith, influenced their conquerors, and demonstrated that some principles are worth any sacrifice. In the end, the barbarians had conquered Rome without ever winning a final battle. They had done it through the quiet influence of a princess who chose love over hatred, scholarship over ignorance, and faith over fear. Most remarkably, they had proven that in history's grand theatre, family connections forged in love can be stronger than the mightiest armies ever assembled for war. The next time you hear about enemies becoming allies, remember Pomponia Graecina and the extraordinary moment when Christianity's fate hung in the balance, not on a battlefield, but in a Roman courtroom where love had already written the verdict. If you would like more information where to research this subject, check out my other videos and pause this image and look into these resources. I hope you enjoyed this forgotten biblical story. Leave a like, comment, share and subscribe. This is very helpful. Join me next time for another lost story of our biblical history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.